Well, hello and welcome to Taste of Australia. This is my first ever podcast show. My name is Alistair. I've got a lovely guest today by the name of Darren. He's going to give us a wave. Hi there, Darren. We'll be talking to Darren in a moment. So my first ever travel podcast show, and you might be thinking why? And the reason is I love to travel. I am a travel writer. I've been in Australia about 19 years. Me and my wife moved over here from England. We've raised a family here. We enjoy Australia. We enjoy travelling around Australia. It's a big country, and we've been to places like Ningaloo and Kakadu and places in between. But you know what? There's a lot more to explore, a lot more to see and do. And I thought, well, maybe I'll do a virtual tour of Australia and invite people like Darren to come and talk about the adventures they've had. So that's the point of the show, is really to learn all about different parts of Australia, whether it be the wheat belt, the outback, Tasmania, up north, over to along the east coast to Byron Bay, up to Queensland, right down the Great Southern, over on the west coast. We're here, this is where I live, down in the southwest of Australia. Hopefully each time we come on the show, we'll learn a little bit more about what is for me a fascinating country. And so Darren has come onto the show, and he's going to talk a little bit about an adventure that he recently had. How you doing, Darren?
Yeah, good, Alistair, and thanks for welcoming and being the first guest. That's such an honour. I know you've been had this project in the pipeline for some time, so it is truly honoured to be the first guest.
Thank you, Darren. Darren Waters, I have to share. So, Darren, you are the first guest in a way. I just have to let you know that you're the first human guest I've had. I did have an interview with a cute and cuddly character, a quokka, a while back. Unfortunately, they didn't talk much.
No, they're the strong silent type, the quokkas. They don't say very much. They just smile a lot, from what I understand.
They do. Very popular, as are you, Darren.
Thanks, Ali.
So I'm I feel very humbled that you've given me the time.
Absolutely. Welcome.
So I know that you did a trip. Now, just before we begin, so for me, I've just returned back from England. It's very warm over there, unusually. And I was lucky enough to miss a lot of the winter down the southwest of Australia, which can be rainier and colder than people would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
I think we actually do get snow from time to time, but only an occasional, flurry right at the very bottom of the coast.
It's a bit of a news event when it happens as well, so it's not very often.
Yeah, it's very rare. Yeah, and not very much. No. But so if you think of I'm thinking that it's really springtime now, right? In the traditional sense. What do you think about that, Darren?
It's funny you say that, Ali, because for many years I always just thought of 1st of September, first day of spring, and then you kind of expect the weather to change almost overnight. I find now though that we've had a lot more education around the Noongar season. So the Noongars are the local Aboriginal people of the southwest of Western Australia, and they very much rely on 6 seasons in their calendar. So in Western Australia, the climate's quite different to that sort of traditional European, spring, summer, winter, and autumn. And we have a 6-season calendar where there's kind of 2 springs and 2 summers. There's the first summer, which is still quite cool, and then there's the second summer, which is very hot. And then there's the 2 springs, and we're really in the first spring right now, where it's still those colder, wet days, still a lot of dew around, and we haven't quite seen the shift of the things growing. That's about another 2 months away, where all of a sudden things will start to sprout. So we've got a 6-season calendar, which we often refer to now, and I believe we're in the season of Jilbo at the moment. Jilbo with a D, D-J-I-L-B-O, Jilbo. So just something to maybe expand your knowledge a little bit about the Noongar 6 seasons. It's quite informative to how things grow and how things work around the climate of Western Australia.
Darren, that's brilliant. And as you mentioned, there's so much to learn about all aspects of Australia. And I've got a bit of homework to do on that one, I think. Thank you. Okay. So let's begin. Now, what I've done is, because it's my first ever podcast show, and I'm allowed to, I've actually got a few questions here which I've written down. So
Sure.
Hopefully we'll kick off. And
hit me up.
So rightio. So for our listeners, could you please explain? So the topic you're going to talk about is an island called, what's the name of the island, Darren?
It's an island called Dirk Hartog Island in Western Australia. A lot of people haven't heard of it, but it is actually the largest island off the mainland of Western Australia.
Well, where would we find it?
Where on the map? Very handy that you've provided a map behind you there, Ali, on the globe. And if you think of Western Australia or the Australian continent on the western side, so about halfway up, just before it takes that sudden right-hand turn, so head up north, it's nearly 1,000 kilometres. It's about 900 kilometres up to the little bit further south there, Ali. Near the Shark Bay region is Dirk Hartog Island. It's actually an island that comes off the end of Steep Point. So a lot of people will know that Steep Point is the westernmost point of mainland Australia. That is about as far west as you can go, but there's an island hanging off the end of that, and it's Dirk Hartog Island. So that's where I headed a few months ago for about a 10-day trip.
Cool. And it's interesting. I love all the Australian names, like when they go Steep Point. Any reason why it's called that? I've not been there.
I'm going to assume it's probably the cliffs. There's some pretty substantial cliffs out on the end there. It's also a really challenging road to get to. There is most certainly no way that a two-wheel drive conventional vehicle would be able to get out there. It is rough, it is sandy, it is corrugated, it is just very hard. And we're talking not just a few kilometres, we're talking nearly 200 kilometres of tough road. So you need a four-wheel drive vehicle, and it's a steep road out there. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Okay. And then that conjures well with I'm thinking. So a road trip, people think about a road trip. So when you left, so you live in Perth?
I do live in Perth, yes.
Yeah, the capital city. The capital city of WA, yeah. So how would you describe the road trip from when you left Perth? It must have been on a lovely bitumen road in the city, and then did it all? How was that? How long did it take you?
That's a road. It's a road I've travelled many times. So we head north for holidays a lot. So whether you're going to any one of the number of places as you head north of Perth, whereas Geraldton, which is a larger city, or Kalbarri, which is a holiday town, the highway is pretty good. It's sealed, lots of stops. Surprisingly, this is the first time I've done the trip of 900 kilometres where there was mobile phone coverage almost the entire way, which I thought I was quite surprised by that. It was only when we got to the Shark Bay region that we lost mobile phone coverage. So no, pretty good road for the first 750 kilometres, and then it becomes a bit challenging.
Okay. And did you have a four-wheel drive?
Yes, I've got a Ford Ranger four-wheel drive. We were towing a camper trailer, so an off-road camper trailer. You absolutely have to have a four-wheel drive. There's no way you could do this trip in a conventional vehicle, full stop. Simply wouldn't get out there.
Yeah. Okay. So you do 8/10 of the trip, but the bit involving going off road towards Steep Point. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of people.
And then what about getting?
A lot of people in Australia have four-wheel drives just for that reason. It's the end bit that they need the four-wheel drive for.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point, actually. Yeah, because often the roads are good right until you get to that kind of off-road area. And what about going over to the island? How did you get there?
Well, interesting. I'll give you a bit of background as to why we actually went to this location in the first place, because up until about a year ago, I really hadn't heard very much about it. It was my sister hit me up and said, we're thinking of going to, she calls it Dirk. And apparently if you're in the know, you just call it Dirk. And it's a bit of a location for four-wheel drive buffs. So it has fabulous four-wheel driving. And people with four-wheel drives who are quite passionate and interested in it are always looking for the next place or the best place to go and do a bit of four-wheel driving. From what I understand, I'm not a massive four-wheel drive buff. I'm kind of getting that way. This is one of the sort of top 5 locations in the state where you would go and do four-wheel driving. So that's the reason we went. Turns out it was a whole lot more than just that. But it was, my sister said, let's do this trip. Would you like to come? I'd just recently separated from my wife, and I had my new vehicle and my camper trailer, and I thought, hey, why not? Let's take 2 weeks and I'll go along. So my sister looked after all the bookings, and I just basically had to rock up on the day, which was nice. But the island's a bit interesting because it's quite a big island. It's about 88 kilometres long, up to 15 kilometres wide. So it's quite long. There are basically no roads. So it's all four-wheel drive tracks. We're driving on the beach, driving on very bad corrugated rock-strewn roads. There are no roads. Wow. And you're pretty much on your own once you're over there. You've got everything. So we had to take enough water for a week and a half, or nearly 2 weeks. You budget on so many litres per day, and you've got to work out how much to carry. I carried 250 litres just for myself. You've got to carry all your food, and you've got to bring it all back. So all your rubbish, all your waste, all has to come out with you as well. So it's quite a tricky place to get to. And actually getting to the island, so it's a drive out to Steep Point. A lot of people visit Steep Point for camping or fishing, and that's as far as they go. But the next bit across to the island is done on a very small barge. And when I say a small barge, it's enough room for one car, basically. I could put my car and my camper trailer, and that was it. There was no room for anything else. And I was on board with about 4 inches to spare. I was nearly too long to be on there, about 10.5 metres. So the barge comes in, he drops the front down, you drive onto the beach and onto the barge, and he takes you across to the island. It's only a 15-minute boat trip. It's pretty quick. It's a very sheltered part of the coast there, so it's a very smooth boat trip. Get to the other side on the island, he drops the front of the barge, and you drive off. And that's it. It's as simple as that. After that, you are on your own. It's, it was very, very interesting way to get to start a holiday.
And did you have to book?
Yes.
I can't imagine you just turned up and
No, you must
book ahead.
As I said, because it's a location that's quite popular with the four-wheel drivers. There's a lot of demand. We went the week before school holidays. School holidays clearly gets busy, but they also limit the number of people that can go on the island. So there's a couple of accommodation options. There is actually an eco resort there that's run by the station holders. It used to be a station, a sheep station. They've turned it into an eco resort now. So there is accommodation there. You can camp there as well. That's on a very small corner of the southern part of the island. The other 9/10 of the island are national park. It's Dirk Hartog Island National Park, oddly enough. And they actually limit the number of cars. It's run by the state government, look after that, through the Department of Conservation. And they limit the number of cars that can go onto the island. I think it's around 12, based on the number of campsites they have. So you have to book. It's very limited. Slots fill up very quick. And what that means, though, is you don't see pretty much any other people for the entire time you're there, which is great.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, as you approach the island, what did it look like? Was it kind of a tropical island, quite arid? Did you feel like Robinson Crusoe? When you got there, was it? I get a sense of feeling that it wasn't very populated. Couldn't imagine many cafes or bars.
Funny you say that. There is actually a very small cafe in the eco resort. It's only open for about an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon, but it is there. So it's a bit of a sanctuary if you're kind of really desperate for a coffee or really desperate for a beer. We did manage to go there, but we were camping a good 50 kilometres away up the island from that cafe. The time we could do that was when we first got there and when we left. Overwhelming thought is it's quite barren. There's really no big trees, so it's very that sort of short, scrubby, dry-looking bush. Anyone who knows, this is the Gascoyne region of Western Australia. The Gascoyne region is around the Tropic of Capricorn. We're a little bit south of the Tropic of Capricorn, so it's certainly not into the tropical region of Western Australia at all.
Yeah. And when you went time of year, so I'd imagine that's a good point, actually. I'd imagine what would be an ideal time of year, do you think? Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Darren. And I did read a little while ago that it's actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's been described as an ark for wildlife. I'd imagine probably underwater wildlife, the marine life. I'd imagine on that one. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm. Gee, and okay, yeah, you just dropped out there, Darren. I don't know. I don't know if that will come out in the recording or not. That's part of the fun of doing the first ever podcast show. Are you still there, Darren? Okay, Darren's just dropped out while I've gone live. Let's see if we can get him back in again. Let's see if he might pop up. No, I don't think he's going to pop up. Rightio. All right. Well, on that note, I think we'll finish off the show. We had half a show with Darren. Maybe next time we'll do part 2. So what I'll do, I'll wrap up now, and I'll see if I can go and get Darren, and then we'll have Dirk Hartog Island part 2, and I'll play a little bit of music just to help me out. Okay, all right. Well, hopefully you'll come back and hear all about Darren's adventures on Dirk Hartog Island. Thank you. Bye-bye.